No day more emotional than a coaching search when it comes to college football. We had four end simultaneously today. I am Josh Neighbors. This is the College Countdown. He is Jack Allen, also part of the College Countdown here. 365 Sports Network, Rogue Media Network. The Sunday that was always going to end every search, no matter at what time the search began. I want to thank everybody for watching this show here on YouTube, on all the platforms you listen to us. We also appreciate that. Wherever you guys get your podcasts. I am Josh Neighbors. He is Jack Allen. So, Jack, you have a jacket on, which means that you've been attending to serious business today because the school that you and I both cover most closely, the Arkansas Razorbacks, have found their next head coach. Auburn has found their next coach. Florida has found their next coach. LSU has found their next coach. Ole Miss has found their next coach. Penn State does not have a coach. Let's see. So I think
Michigan State might have a head coach.
Michigan State fired and got a new head coach. all in today. Shout out Pat Fitzgerald. He's back. He's back in the zeitgeist. So, just first off, as I always ask you, how are you?
Man, it has been a day. Let me tell you, when you're making phone calls while standing in the shower, that's how you know things are going crazy. That's when all of this stuff on our end from the Silverfield perspective broke, and we're trying to get web articles out there. I was, taking a shower this morning, and so then having to step out of church at random points. It's just been that kind of day,
Yeah. So actually, the funniest part about this today is all of this solidified. This was true a few days ago, but like Florida having to bow out of the Lane Kiffin thing kind of made me realize where jobs are in the pecking order.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about LSU maybe being the best job in the country. I think it's Ohio State. Not sure if that's credit to Ryan Day or to Urban Meyer, but like I think that's number one. And then also it's part of that's being the Big Ten too. Not saying it's better on its own, but it's being the Big Ten. I would say there's a good argument for Alabama, Texas, and then LSU is the next best job. Each have an argument, but the fact that Florida, a state that we have taken for one of the most talent-rich states in the country, right? A great spot, a lot of competition, obviously in-state and out-of-state as the way teams recruit there. But like they bow out of the Lane Kiffin thing, and that's what sets this all in motion for the jobs down the line. I think this sets up that LSU's one of the three best jobs in the country. Don't just stop. The conversation kind of ends there because if Florida's bowing out of LSU because LSU's got their hooks into Lane Kiffin, kind of shows you where every program is at this point in time.
Well, and it was really easy to follow it from there as the domino. We talk about this as being this whole, dominoes falling into place kind of deal. And usually you kind of have to paint these pictures of this felt very straightforward of how it all unfolded. It was Kiffin or LSU and Florida for Kiffin. And when Florida backed out, Sumrall was supposed to be the main target at Auburn. Well, Florida was the higher on the food chain, so they ate that. Well, then Arkansas was supposed to be the favorite for Golesh. Well, then a bigger fish came along in Auburn that suddenly had an opening, and Arkansas was left down the pecking order. And so it just goes to show it doesn't really matter when your job comes open. It's when everything breaks, when the final dominoes start to fall, where are you in that pecking order? And Arkansas was at the bottom, it feels like, of this SEC pecking order for sure.
And another funny part of this, I was telling my girlfriend today that now we're using police terms like person of interest. Bob Chesney, person of interest. Not in a murder investigation, but for the UCLA coaching search.
I don't know which one is the worst position to be in.
Had you heard person of interest before this recent coaching cycle?
That's not one. Target was always it always felt like, hey, this guy is the target. It's almost like a hunting kind of aspect, whereas now it feels more like a criminal search, or like we're looking for someone who done it, who done got the coaching job. I don't know. And so our terminology has changed. I feel like I've used different terms this week, just especially with all of the Lane drama of like, under contract compared to reached out to compared to verbal agreements and referendums of agreement, like all of these legal jargons of where are we at in the search? I think we've had to be creative with our language this week.
So you grew up in Baton Rouge. Lane Kiffin to LSU, which we always thought was kind of the case. It kind of ends where we thought it would end. The big question to me here is about I think this will go year to year, but I'm a big believer that Lane Kiffin should have been allowed to finish the job that he started. I actually thought that, and you can say what you want, big picture, but yesterday or whenever the Egg Bowl was at this point in time, 2 days ago, that was evidence of how actually focused and how good that team is. And it's credit to him. I think Ole Miss, I know about the poaching players, whatever thing, but they are on the brink. They're currently actually in the best season in program history. I think they're doing themselves a disservice for for not allowing a coach in Lane Kiffin to finish out the rest of the way. Majority of people feel differently than me. I'm fine being in the minority here. If Ole Miss cares about winning championships, their best avenue to doing so this year, which is as good of a shot as they ever had, is letting him finish out the year. You can be against it. You can be for it. Most people are against that. Your thoughts about how that played out, and now we have a new permanent head coach, Pete Golding. No interview. We're just doing it. Pete Golding's the head coach. It was talked about. Joe Judge was considered the guy. Even this morning, I was seeing some Joe Judge material, I believe, even on 3. But, I mean, what are your thoughts about that situation? Because those players, amidst all of the smoke, were dialed in for Lane, took care of business in a very significant way. Even they took care of business even in a way that Alabama didn't. I know Auburn's probably a better team than Mississippi State, but they were ready, they were prepared, and they were dialed in despite all the noise. So where are you on the should Lane Kiffin have finished out the year situation?
Obviously I look at this a little bit more from an LSU perspective. And so the question that I have is, if you're LSU, would you let your head coach continue to coach into infinitum whenever signing day is right around the corner, whenever the portal's theoretically going to open up, if Ole Miss makes a big run? There are so many steps that if as LSU, I would not want my coach that I'm bringing in and paying a whole lot of money to be actively coaching against coaching for one of my rivals at the point. So I wouldn't act as though LSU was not putting a ton of pressure on Lane to go ahead and come on home. Let's go ahead and end this and get this next train going, because I think that, LSU has an opportunity to make a lot of ground in the next couple of days. And that was such a big point of emphasis for them. From an Ole Miss perspective, though, it's such a logistical nightmare. And this is why I think you just had to go ahead and cut ties. Was, first of all, Lane was the one holding them hostage, saying, you either let me coach this or I'm out of here. I'm taking everybody with me. And for me in that situation, if you're Ole Miss, you cannot simultaneously have a coach coaching your team and actively recruiting against you. And there's not a world in which both aren't happening at the same time. If Lane has simultaneously been named the coach at LSU and is still allowed to coach this season.
Eric Morris, though, Eric Morris is doing this at North Texas.
Well, and there's that point, but I would argue that the recruiting grounds and all of that kind of stuff between Oklahoma State and North Texas are going to look a little bit different than between Ole Miss and LSU. Number one would be the counter there. I also just
but isn't that true for LSU and Ole Miss? Because I mean, like I thought Ari Wasserman's point that he made last week, where LSU's ceiling Ole Miss's ceiling is LSU's expectation. I don't think that's totally fair necessarily to put it that way, but I mean, Ole Miss is achieving something they have not done before, but that's something that we've also seen at LSU happen a bunch. Like, I think there's a big difference between letting Pete Golding do this thing than letting Lane Kiffin do it.
My point being that the guys on the recruiting trail and the guys that you're going to be competing with in the portal are going to be the same guys between Ole Miss and LSU. Whereas I don't think North Texas and Oklahoma State are in recruiting battles. We talked about this with whenever Bill Belichick, it's like, why is Bill Belichick in fights with Charlotte for players? It's the same kind of deal there. Oklahoma State and North Texas. Like, if Oklahoma State's recruiting against North Texas, you start to go, okay, why are they going after that player? Whereas if Ole Miss and LSU, Ole Miss and LSU have historically fought over the same batch of recruits, the same type of players, and especially now as Ole Miss has gotten money and found success under Lane, more and more that's been a competitive landscape in the recruiting trail. And so, I mean, is the idea that you're going to have Lane and Pete Golding going after the same kids while both are coaching on the same staff? Like, how does that work? What does that look like?
I mean, the players to win games, and Ole Miss is winning in a way they never have before. Like this kind of reminds me of this is what frustrates a lot of fans about baseball. It's like, isn't the point for the Pirates to get players like a Paul Skeens, right? And so why would you trade him? The whole point is this guy is as good as he can be at his position, or you trade him to get more stuff. They just trade it anyway in the very end. But like, isn't the whole point to get players to win? And you are winning in a way you have never won ever before. And I know these teams compete for guys, but that was Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin that you were competing with. Like, this is their best chance to win a title since you and I have been alive. Full stop. Full stop. And I think all the sentiments you're saying about the future are true, but there is an element of the now to me that matters in a significant way, because look, they can pump as much money as they want to into this roster next year. They could give Pete Golding an awesome roster. He's still not a guy who's been a head coach before. And like, I wouldn't be shocked if, he's got a great roster as good as insert team here, but he might get beat out coaching wise because he hasn't done it before. This is their best chance. I would, if I'm Ole Miss, I don't care your girlfriend broke up with you, but this could be the best vacation of your life. I don't care if she's told you she's going to leave you after the vacation's over. Enjoy the vacation, because you might not ever have a vacation this good.
Well, but the question is, you don't know what your girlfriend's gonna do on that trip. You think it's gonna be great. I don't
care though, because you're not sure you'll get back to Hawaii. For my girlfriend and I, who's actually in the background of this video, are going to Hawaii for Christmas. But like, there's no Hawaii trip planned in the future. You're at the dance. You're in the play. Like, I get all of this. I understand. And Jack, I am the person who preaches that college sports is more sociology and people than it is actual sport. But like, realize where you are in the pecking order and let the guy who's got you to the dance finish the darn thing off. Like, because not for semantics' sake, but because he gives you the best shot of attaining something, a national championship at Ole Miss that I didn't think was possible growing up my entire life watching SEC football.
I'm just going to once again go back to the LSU perspective of like, if I'm LSU, I'm not letting him do that.
Well, guess what? Go find somebody else then. Who else they're going to hire? Who else was rumored for LSU's job?
Well, but that's the question. Like, Lane Kiffin is willing to leave. He's already he wanted to leave. He wanted to go to LSU.
Next year, he wants to finish this year, though.
But what I'm saying is, if I'm LSU, I'm telling him, come on, get over here. Let's go. And it's not as simple. Like I think LSU could have easily held Lane to an ultimatum and won that stare off.
I think next year when Pete Golding wins 9 games at Ole Miss, we'll be looking back like they've got a better chance. And like, these coaches are not always good at in-game coaching. We see it all the time. And like, I actually trust Lane in games. I trust him with these players. I trust the players with Trinidad Chambliss, once again, our guy, D2 legend, was like, yeah, we're very aware of the situation going on right now. And we know what's ahead of us and what we can accomplish. And we're focused on that. And that played out completely. Now I know the level of competition will be risen, but your best chance with no championship game happening is giving Lane Kiffin a full couple weeks to just, if the point is to win, this is your best chance to win, and not letting him coach it out, which he wanted. Like, I understand LSU side of it, but it doesn't. But it sounds like LSU was going to let him get what he wanted in terms of coaching the rest of the year out.
Well, and I mean that, like you said, we've
who else are going to hire, Jack?
Yeah, who else are you going to go get? That's kind of been the theme for this whole, like, as many jobs came open, it very much got to a point of, who else are you going to go get? And I think that is something where Lane did have LSU over the barrel a little bit, because when you look around, it's like he's the proven guy who seems to be on the block. The only proven guy that really feels like he was available was Lane Kiffin. And so I guess you could, I could see where he may have enough leverage to be able to get LSU to just say, do whatever you want to. but I could not imagine being in a locker room, on the recruiting trail, any of that, where you are having to actively work against the guy who is also simultaneously leaving you. That just does not compute to me.
Yeah, but Ole Miss is gonna portal the team anyway. That's how they're gonna win. That's how they've won the last couple of years, is the portal. And once again, the reason why they're so good is because, I mean, they really did think that Austin Simmons was the heir apparent to Jackson Dart, but guess what? He did so well. The guy he got as the backup got the job and didn't let go of it because he scouted that guy good enough, and also the apparatus paid him well enough. I mean, I think it's a lot of money. I think it's not a lot of money. It's too much of a gamble to prove your point if you're Ole Miss. Like, I think we would have heard LSU is saying no to this idea, but if he's like, I'm going to coach this thing out because y'all are 7-5 anyway, and you're going to let me do it, because what are you going to do? You're going to, like, who else are you going to hire? He had that leverage. And that's my frustration with all of this, is that there's nothing wrong with everybody being aware of the situation. Being like, let's do something special. It'll end after this year, but something special is the opportunity. That's not a normal opportunity at Ole Miss. And this is not about, like, I'm not even doing the kids thing here. I'm not even saying the kids deserve to have their guy. The kids were pretty aware of it and showed up and played pretty well the other day. Also, Jack, another part, home run hire for LSU. How about that? Another part we haven't mentioned yet. I mean, this guy's going to win at least a championship at LSU.
Who knows? Who knows?
I feel pretty good about saying that. I said about Brian Kelly, but he also didn't get the full 10 years. I still think if he has another 5 years. But, I mean, if you look at his coaching record, he's won everywhere he's gone. And he has a very good way of identifying talent. He's an offensive genius, but he doesn't really usually run his own offense. He brings in good people to do it for him. And those people actually tend to struggle other places sometimes too, which is the other part of this, is that he's the right, like, he's as good as Ole Miss could have hoped for. He is as good as they could have hoped for. And that hope has now run out. Let it run all the way out. Play out the string. I'm having a tough time with it, man. I am. I know you and I are both sides of it, but I just can't.
The one fear I have, it feels like a slam dunk. It feels like this is an easy path to success. But, I mean, how many times have we seen before where a coach can bump against his ceiling and you just assume that there's another level? We assume that if you give Lane Kiffin more resources or you put him in this LSU ecosystem, suddenly everything's going to pop. But that's the same exact argument you made, like you said, about Brian Kelly. The idea was he's played for a national championship at Notre Dame. Like, he was in the game and couldn't quite get over the Alabama hump. But if you give him LSU's resources, he's going to do it. And look where that got LSU. 0 playoff appearances. They did get a Heisman Trophy, but it ultimately didn't work out, and so as much as I want to say like Lane equals success, that part of my brain and that recent trauma, let's call it, and that recent experience makes me say, hang on, let's see it first.
Also, I watched LSU quit in the entire first quarter of a game against Arkansas and still won the game, which is pretty impressive. And also, that team, let's be honest, Michael Van Buren, not good. Like, very not good. And they're pushing Oklahoma, a playoff team, with an interim coach to, like, the absolute limits. It's a different weight class that LSU is playing in. And look, I'd love to see him against the Ryan Day, but now he'll get that chance. Now, if he gets the type of, if he inspires the type of thing that he inspired at Ole Miss, we have good other hires. All right, the next hire down the line, Sumrall at Florida. I know people feel like it is like Billy Napier 2.0. Just because Billy didn't work out doesn't mean this one won't. I think it's a good hire. I think that Florida handled, you and I talked about before, Florida handled this entire thing the right way. They gave Billy the chance. Didn't work out. That's not a level of success commensurate with the Florida program. Sumrall being the Auburn guy was a little bit weird the entire time, but there weren't other names out there. And I'm sure Florida did their due diligence. I think it's a good hire. Who knows, will work out if it's Tom Fornelli always says, but that's probably the right choice for them.
Yeah, the question that I have is, and it's something that we've seen at Florida, honestly, since Urban Meyer is, they've brought in a few of these guys who we kind of touched on a little bit, but you are used to bringing in 3-star talent and making it play really well. The question with Florida is, what can you do when you're able to get the 5-star talent? Because that state is so rich in recruiting. There's so much just there out. You knock on the neighbor's door and there's probably a 4-star receiver hanging out there. And so the question is, when you have that talent, can you maximize it? Because they've shown they can maximize 3-star talent. They've shown that they can maximize, you think about Dan Mullen was great at Mississippi State, goes to Florida, isn't able to unlock that next level. Billy Napier, great at Louisiana, gets to Florida, isn't able to unlock that next level. The question is whether Sumrall is the kind of guy who can both do it as someone who's making a lot out of a little. Can he be someone who makes a lot out of a lot? And that's the question for me.
Let's go to my favorite hire out of all of this. Alex Golesh to Auburn. I think this is about as perfect as you can ask for. Because the one thing, no matter who coaches Auburn, whether it's me, you, or whoever else they've had in the in-between, Brian Harsin, Gus Malzahn, and whatever else, they can play defense. If you can figure out how to marry the defensive talent that they've acquired with a consistent offense. I believe Auburn popped 2 65-yard pass plays against Alabama last night, and the rest of the time it was not very good. If they can find a way to bring that style of offense. And actually they had 2 receivers this year that would be pretty good for what Golesh is going to bring. But if they can bring that level of offense and marry it with I think the defense will probably take a step back just because of the style they play, just because of if you're going to play
play that many possessions, all that kind of stuff.
If you're going to veer and shoot, Briles it right. You watched it a ton when you covered Baylor. If you're going to bring that, it'll take a step off, but you get the same kind of players, you should be okay. I think this hire makes maybe the most sense out of all the hires that we've seen. And I think Auburn is, I think Sumrall would have been good there. I think Golesh might be a better fit though, in terms of what he does schematically.
Yeah. Sumrall feels like it would have been a more traditional Auburn, like you talked about, where it's like really, really good defense, a place you don't want to go because you don't want to play on the Plains because it's going to be a 17-14 knockout, drag out kind of like Sumrall would have brought those kind of games to Auburn. I think Golesh, like you said, you kind of marry an offensive wizard with the defensive just nature that state, that region, that program just kind of has
players who can tackle people
caked into the walls there. And so, I also am very intrigued to see what Brown does at quarterback, whether he, it's not a great quarterback class. Maybe he thinks he can be one of those guys in the NFL. Or does he come to Auburn, and kind of answer some questions there? I think that if Golesh can maintain the talent, there's a lot of young talent there. We've talked about it a lot this year that you're kind of building toward this group. If you can keep that group around, keep a Coleman at receiver, like keep those weapons around, Auburn feels like it could be a special fit.
And once again, Auburn for being little brother to Alabama and to Georgia. I mean, you could very much argue the referees kept them from winning the Georgia game this year and how close they to beating LSU this year. It's like, man, your little brother, they are little brother, period.
Well,
not by much, not by much.
But speaking of the next job, Arkansas can also make that same case because they had a positive point differential up until this last week against Missouri. And so close only counts in what? Horseshoes and hand grenades.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did that because we're going to spend some time on this next one. First, we will hear a quick word from our friends at DraftKings.
Conference titles, playoff hopes, everything's on the line now. A single loss in November can end it all, and no one gets you closer to the college football action than DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook for live betting. New customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NEIGHBORS. That's code NEIGHBORS to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, pass-through of per wager tax may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio limited time offer.
Okay. Let's do it. So you and I both live in Arkansas. We cover Arkansas. We're not from Arkansas. We talked about Alex Golesh to Arkansas last week. Trey Schapp, who's in my office, reported it, did not get it right. And I'm not giving him a pass on this. They're just not going to do it. I'm sorry. I like Trey a lot. Good dude. Just not going to give him a pass on this. This, honestly, like if you ever go to journalism school, it was basically tailor-made for college coaching searches because the number of people that can feed you information within a coaching search is a lot more, it's much more vast in college than it is pros, right? Pros, there's like inside the building, right? Inside the building. If your source is out to the building in the pros, I mean, it does not stop. Please stop. College is like you got a board of trustees, you have boosters, you've got the actual university apparatus, you got the coach's agent, you got the coach himself, you got other people trying to feed it, whatever it is.
And there's such an agent apparatus beyond that exists.
One job leads to the next, as we saw today. They all got hired within like a 4-minute, 20-minute span, it felt like. So Arkansas hires Ryan Silverfield from Memphis. And this is not about Ryan Silverfield, the person. I don't know him personally. This is not about his family. Don't know them personally. This guy is DOA here in Arkansas. And it's really unfair because as somebody who's not from here, what I'm watching occur, Jack, is that this is a program that fired their coach that they should have fired before this season, maybe even before last season. And they had a long time to make this search happen, make this coaching hire happen. But they were the last dog at the bowl because they don't have the resources everybody else has. Everybody else got a coach over another coach, I would say, in this situation, except for Arkansas. Arkansas is left settling. They fired their coach before Napier at Florida, before Hugh Freeze at Auburn. And I'm trying to think before Brian Kelly at LSU, and they get the last pick. And I just want to tell folks, and this is not a knock on the state, but I have to say this here. I'm going to say it loudly. I'm going to keep saying it. This is a state that cares very much about their football. But whenever a game comes up that's the opening of modern gun season, we worry about attendance. They care more about rifles than they do right guards. And that's what you end with. They can put the trash bags on their heads all they want to, but this was the kind of hire I always thought they were going to make. I was told that more money was involved. I said, I believe it when I see it. I was told other coaches were involved. I said, I believe it when I see it. They got a guy who the Daily Memphin today had an article that was, is it the right time to can Silverfield? The article was saying no, but he lost his last 3 games and never went to an AAC title game at a program that is in a major American city. It's got a pretty good access to talent. It just had a coach go to Florida State, not 5-6 years ago. And he is a good coach. It might work out at Arkansas, but this is a hire on par with the level of commitment financially that has been made to the football program here. End of speech.
Well, it's so tough, Josh, because you look at it and you and I, we cover this team. We'd like for them to be good because
I love it.
When it's more fun when they're good. And there's so many people that we know that, are so invested into this that you want it to be good for their sake. And I don't know that Ryan Silverfield is really that bad of a hire. Like ultimately, it's a guy with head coaching experience who's, he was 50-25 at Memphis. Like, let's not act like it was just, he had back-to-back 10-win seasons before this year. Obviously this year, the last 4 weeks have not gone the way that they hoped for, but it's not like he has just failed miserably. It's that kind of bumping up against what is the ceiling. But when the other part of it is that I look at the other names that get floated out there and, Golesh, yes, there's promise. And we've talked about what he could do at Auburn. We talk about Kane Womack. We saw what he was able to do at South Al, and now he's, at Alabama. But ultimately, like those resumes are very similar to what Ryan Silverfield, like you can make the same knock about Golesh at South Florida, that they've invested in that program and he's had success, but he hasn't ultimately had the success.
But nobody else wanted him.
And Ryan Silverfield has beaten Alex Golesh when the two have gone head to head, and he's beaten Kane Womack when he's beaten these other guys. He's beaten Sumrall when they've gone head to head. And so, as much as it feels the problem, I think a big part of the problem is that fans had enough time to taste the idea of Golesh. They bought into what he was selling. They spent a whole weekend, looking at old Tennessee Hendon Hooker highlights. They spent a whole weekend listening to his speech at the Broyles Award when he was in Little Rock. Like, they go back and they're like, okay, I can buy what he's selling. And now the rug gets pulled out from them, and they're left with this other guy that they don't really know. Their only experience with him really is him beating them at the Liberty Bowl this year. And you're left feeling like you're holding the bag when ultimately it's as much of a risk as any of these other guys are.
But do you like his chances to beat those guys now he's up a weight class?
And that's the thing. And you touched on it, it's like ultimately I don't even know if it really matters like which one of those three guys had come to Arkansas if the money's not there, if everything else is not unlocked. And so then that brings you to the other half of this issue and the other half of this argument, which is, it almost felt like you had to make a hire that would be popular, not necessarily a hire that would be good. That's point. That's why it's like, as much as I don't think that Bobby Petrino was the answer, Bobby Petrino would have been popular in some circles. As much as I don't think that John Gruden was the answer, John Gruden would have been popular in some circles. And maybe that's what it takes to unlock the money and to get the state to rally behind, because like you said, it almost feels like he's dead on arrival, that people have given up on this idea before it's even started. And if that's the case coming in, then you've put yourself up against the wall. And I don't know how you recover from that.
But my problem is that there was nobody else wanted him. And the issue that this really shows, I'm not sure anybody, like, if you run the Leach stuff at Mississippi State didn't work to some amazing level, right? But it worked enough for them to want somebody who does something different. It's like the Army thing. Like, okay, we have to run something different. And it worked enough. Now, whenever they, Army or Navy, played Notre Dame, it got sideways mostly. But Mississippi State, to their credit, did beat LSU, but it looked like LSU hadn't prepared a second in the 2020 season for the entire offseason to prepare for the air raid, but they hadn't prepared 1 second for it and got blasted by it. And yes, that'll happen sometimes. But what does Silverfield bring that a Golesh brings, where it's like we run veer and shoot, we do something a little bit different in the offense? Same thing can be said for an Eric Morris, and does not bring the multiple stops winning pedigree that a Sumrall, and look, I don't think they were in on Sumrall. I don't think they had a chance at James Franklin at Virginia Tech. My point is this, is that Arkansas is not serious about football. Like, they want their fans, they want to think that they are. They're not. This entire coaching search has illustrated an athletic director who is not good at inspiring donation. He's not good at inspiring actually the fans at all, period. And he's got a few people on the board that back him. And he's made a hire who was the last guy out of the entire group. He was, and look, you might be right. He might be a better coach than those guys, but all of these guys at these other schools, I trust to have more resources at those places than Arkansas is willing to give. And look, like, we're going to have him on tomorrow morning, 7:30. This is not a Ryan Silverfield problem. I feel bad for the uphill climb that he's about to face. But this is not a program that's spending money in a way that makes me think they're about to be competitive. So they're kind of getting what they pay for. This message is more to Arkansas, the apparatus, and the fans. Like, alignment matters. Having like a vision for your football program, from president to athletic director to coach to fan base, matters. And they have, ever since I have not been here a long time, but they have lacked that. The fact there's a lot of people still fighting for a coach who didn't win a single game during his interim tenure here at all. last coach to win a game here at Arkansas, Jack. Who is it?
Sam Pittman.
Sam Pittman, last coach to win a game. And there are people fist fighting me like, let Bobby Petrino get his players in. When they went and got an offensive base roster, they went and spent at tackle. They went and spent at wide receiver, at quarterback, at running back, and built a team that I think that Bobby Petrino probably would have signed off on with the money they had himself. Like, this has to be a more serious operation than what it is, because Bobby Petrino is a hard ass. Well, apparently not enough. Do you see how badly his team got penalized against Missouri? See how bad they were penalized against Mississippi State? Like, this is more of a message to the entire fan base. Y'all need to get more involved in your team. You can't just be like, this is frustrating. Then be like, I want this guy. You like, if you want a serious team, gotta be like Ole Miss. Mississippi's a poor state. There's 2 SC teams there. Ole Miss still found the money in the banana stand to fund a roster that was commiserate and make it competitive, and made a coach even try to want to stay and coach the team all the way. Arkansas is so far away from that. And they don't think they are because they played them tight in a game. But they're so far away from that because they play everybody tight and they lose every single one of the games. Like, it is a serious commitment. And Jack, you might end up like Missouri. 28 wins in the last 3 years, and it's upsetting as a Tiger alum that we didn't go to a college ball playoff. But guess what? I was there when we were losing Middle Tennessee State on homecoming. So as somebody who does not give money to the program, I'm not too upset with Eli Drinkwitz's performance. Like, you have to understand who you are and be okay with the results, because right now everybody else cares a lot more than you do. Maybe save Kentucky. I don't know. I'm not sure Kentucky cares that much. But like, I can't say that there's other programs that are winning more that care less than Arkansas. And you're a TV guy, you guys have to be a little more down the middle. But I just think like this is what this crystallizes for me, is that it's not just it's on everybody. This is not just on the athletic department, to me at least.
Well, it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg kind of situation where you look at it and the question is, winning brings investment, winning brings money, winning brings fans, winning brings revenue. Like, winning solves a lot of problems. But the question is, the problem is that you also need money to win. And so it's almost, like saying I love you first. There's a risk. You may invest money. It may not work
great
out.
Point. I love you.
You may invest money. It may not work out. You may invest your time. You may invest your energy, and it doesn't work out, and you get burned, and it hurts, and it sucks. But you know what? You got to risk it if you want to take it to that next level at some point. And I think that's kind of where Arkansas is right now. Is there's a lot of people who are so upset about having been on a part of a losing program for so long, and they want to blame somebody. And so whatever, I was telling someone earlier today, Hunter Yurachek could have hired God himself to coach this football team. And there would have been a lot of people in the state that would have been very mad just because of the guy who did it. And because, you ask them, who would you rather have had? And they're like, I don't know, somebody else to get me excited. But the reality is that you have to invest, whether, and with that investment, with that belief, then can help unlock doors that you didn't have before and opportunities that your program didn't have before. But it's hard to do that when you don't have a history of winning. And that's kind of what Arkansas is looking at right now, is trying to convince people to buy into a program that has not given them returns, but like one time in the last decade.
Yes, it is they are the modern conundrum. That's why I actually think it's very fascinating to cover Arkansas. It's like they are they talk about the winning tradition, but man, it was during the 60s, like the nationally relevant tradition. I had somebody who, he made a lot of salient points to me about a whole lot of stuff, because I expect to contend for a playoff spot every 3 years. And I'm like, you all haven't spent even close to enough money to be in that tax bracket. I think that's the hard part here is that, as fans, you sometimes have to realize like everything's related. Your program is not in a vacuum. LSU has killed themselves to get to this place. And guess what's happening to them now? They're having their fans are having the most miserable end to a season of the most successful season of their entire lives, because they haven't built it that way before this. They have not built it that way before this. And so I think that's my frustration, is that it's not just going to turn like it's the SEC. It doesn't turn like that. Like Brent Venables, if you look at what Oklahoma's doing this year, Jack, they're not fun to watch. They're not scoring a lot of points. They had to overcome a 3 interception performance yesterday to ice a playoff spot, and like feather in the, perception's reality though. It's like you iced to win against LSU, interim coach LSU, Michael Van Buren LSU, and you threw 3 picks against them and you barely won the game. But like Oklahoma spent to get the best defensive line in college football, and their offense, much like actually Ole Miss last year, almost cost them that at the very end. It's almost cost them multiple times, but it takes time to build that kind of a level of a program. And I think that's what people miss, is that this is not overnight. This is Arkansas basketball. Credit to you. You built something serious. And guess what? You might not be as good this year as you were last year, but if you keep giving a roster to a guy, that's why I want Rick Barnes to win so bad. If Rick keeps getting these teams in the conversation, eventually Rick will break through. But you have to make sure that you spend to be a part of the conversation. And Arkansas is not spending that way. There's no indication they will spend that way. And I think that's the most concerning thing to me, is like people like Trey Biddy that we respect a lot, that's covered the team for a long time. He's like, I'm confused why the hire happened. Like, Jack, is this hire not commensurate with the level of Arkansas football that we've seen recently? Is being the last dog at the bowl not the level that we've seen recently?
The problem is that they were the first dog at the bowl, and then a bunch of bigger dogs came before the food got there and bullied them out of the way.
But feeding time was 2 hours away.
The problem was that they got to the bowl at 2:00 in the afternoon, but feeding time wasn't till 5.
Right.
The bigger dogs got there by 5.
At 4:55, they boxed you out.
And so I'm the problem that I have with a lot of people who are complaining about the hire is that this lack of understanding, like, of what we've talked about with this pecking order. You could clearly see how the dominoes fell out and where Arkansas stands from a financial standpoint, from all the reasons that we've talked about. And so the question is, at that point, once Sumrall is not available, once Golesh is not available, once you kind of missed your window on Eric Morris, I think that was kind of I do think there is a certain element where Eric Morris and Golesh were like, Golesh was 1, Eric Morris was 2. They thought they were going to get Golesh. They told Morris he wasn't going to get it. He said, all right, I'm going to Oklahoma State. I do think there is a little bit of that, which, that would be the one gripe that I have, is that I think you could have gotten someone who's a little more fun and innovative in Eric Morris. But once that passed, when you thought you had Golesh and then all these other opportunities shook out the way they did, what more were you wanting? Like, who is the other name that's out there that you were like, man, I wish we would
be Eric Morris at Oklahoma State or at Arkansas?
What?
Would you rather be Eric Morris at Oklahoma State or Arkansas?
I think Eric Morris will have more success at Oklahoma State than he would at Arkansas, but I do think that Arkansas is in a better spot, or not a better.
They're getting an SEC check. Is that what you want to say?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
but why is my point now is like Arkansas is basically like Big Ten's Purdue. That's what Arkansas is. Like, you are taking the check and you are taking the losses.
Well, and so that's my question, is just like, what more were you really expecting? And I think this goes back to what you've been talking about this whole time, is this idea of changing expectations, this idea of understanding where you belong in not belong, and what it's going to take to get to that next level where you are an attractive job. And, maybe Silverfield is the type of coach that can kind of bring you at least to like a level place to be able to launch from. And I think that's what, as someone who covers Arkansas, I would love to see this staff be able to do, is find a way to level things off, make things consistent, put them in a position where you can launch forward into the future. Whether that happens, it's not off to a great start, just by like we said, the reaction that people have had. But that's what I'm hoping to see as this all moves forward.
All right, we're going to do a part 2 if you have time. Part 2 to talk about some actual football that happened this weekend, because we have to talk some ACC here in a second. So we'll break this podcast. We'll do another one. But Jack Allen, folks can find you where?
at Jack Allen TV on social media. I've been covering a lot of D2 football lately. Harding football making a run through the postseason. Go Bisons. The old alma maters at it again. It's very interesting. Regionalization is a big thing there. I know this podcast is already at its 45th minute, but I do want to say, kill regionalization at the D2, D3 level. I know finances are an issue. Let's find a way to figure it out. There's no reason that number 2 Harding should be playing number 6 Pitt State in the second round, and there's no reason they should have been playing a top 15 team in the first round. Those other schools deserve better. Pitt State deserves not to lose to Harding every year, even though they're going to. Go Bisons. Let's get it all figured out, guys.
All right, folks, you can find us at CC Podcast, JN on Twitter. Also, I'm at Josh Neighbors _. Okay, Jack, football time coming next.